Yep. I've got a casting project coming up, and I've got to build a new foundry furnace. And molding flasks, a riddle, make up some green sand, patterns of course, ingot molds. Basically, I need to build a whole new foundry. Step 1, have a beer. As ridiculous as it seems, this Heineken mini keg is the perfect size for a #1 crucible. As you can see, this one's been through a version of this furnace many times. I call this the Mark I furnace. This is going to be the Mod 3 version, which will be fueled with gas. First step, get the top off. Perfect. Alright, with the top off of her there, we can see the various bits and pieces. We have the thing that pressurizes the beer. Forget that. And we got the lid with the tube, and we got the main body. Oh, that's sharp. Main body there. We'll clean this edge up. We'll take that tube off. We need both those remaining pieces. Okay, we've got our furnace shell and lid all cleaned up. Got last that skunky beer out of there. If you do this, you'll find there's a bit of glue where that pressurizing capsule was attached. You can just leave that, it doesn't hurt anything. Next step, you need to line it with refractory cement. You can buy refractory cement, it's a little on the pricey side, hard to find sometimes. So we're gonna make our own using perlite and Portland cement. Perlite comes right from the garden center of any big box store. Same with the Portland. Piece of 4-inch PVC pipe is gonna be our form for the middle. If you're unfamiliar with perlite, this is what it looks like. It's obsidian glass that's been turned into basically volcanic Rice Krispies. It's mainly air, very lightweight. It's going to be an excellent insulating material for our refractory. The ratio for the refractory is going to be 1 part Portland to about 4.5 parts perlite, maybe even 5, depending on what looks right. You want a very dry mix. All right, 1 part Portland, 4 or 5 parts perlite. Let's go 4.5. Bit of a mix. It's all right. Some water. Go light. Plenty. Let's mix, see what we got. Still too dry. More water. There's plenty of Portland in there, I think. Yeah, that looks better. Yeah. Maybe a little more perlite. That other half, bring the ratio up to 5. That's good, yeah. All right, scrape it out. The bottom it goes. base layer done. About an inch, inch and a quarter thick maybe. Repeat. Alright, so the furnace parts have all the refractory rammed up. That's an 8-quart bag of perlite. We used probably 7 quarts worth of it. It's a 3-pound bag of mortar, Portland cement. We used all of that plus another scoop out of the second bag. Next step, a few hours, we'll take that piece of PVC out of the main furnace body. If you don't take it out relatively soon after the refractory cement sets, it sticks in there so hard you have to cut it out with a hacksaw. The lid, wrapped open tape there, that got a little wet. That batch that got put in there, I don't know how that's gonna do. I think it'll probably turn out okay. And that little cup I was using to scoop, I put the leftovers in there. Maybe use that as a little plinth to get the crucible up a little higher in the furnace, make it a little easier to remove. Okay, so it's been several weeks. Our refractory has cured. It's time to cut the holes. We're gonna put a vent hole in the top. And this is the basic setup. Here's the burner we're gonna use. We're gonna make a tangential hole coming in so we swirl the flame around. It's a propane burner. We're using a 1 3/4 inch hole saw. Yeah. All right, hole saw number 1, worn out. So, fresh from Johnny's Big Box, carbide. This better work. Ooh, nasty. I don't know how much refractory I'm just cutting the rest of that off by hand. Nasty. That buggered it all up. Well, that hole saw messed this up pretty good. We're gonna get the rest of this off by hand. Now, I've done this several times with hole saws and I've never had it mess up this badly, but if you'll see, man, we blew a big chunk out of there. It's gonna take a lot to fix that, but it can be done. Nasty, disappointing. We'll clean this up with a file before we get on with that. Okay, so we're switching it up. We're gonna go with less power on the drill on this. Yeah, you heard, less power. Working better though. All right, we're basically through. So that worked much better, much more how it has in the past. Made a nice clean cut. We got to clean up some of the refractory on the inside. We'll use a cold chisel, blend that in. So we got a nice clean path for the flame, but that's how it's supposed to go. Still needs a little cleanup around the edge, but not nearly as bad. Well, that didn't go quite as planned. The lid, I think I'm just gonna rip this out, recast it. This went much more as planned. A couple minutes with a cold chisel, that feathered right in. So that's nice. Got a little plinth, which will sit down in it, which will put our little crucible about at optimum height for our burner here. I've mentioned this is the Mod 3 version of what I call the Mark 1 furnace. The new modification is I have some high temperature, actual proper refractory cement. I'm going to line all of the refractory I cast with this once we fix this. Alright, so we're going to line the little furnace with some refractory cement. It says it's good for up to about 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. This is what it looks like when it gets opened up. It's a sodium silicate based product which has separated out a little bit, and that needs to be mixed together. Also, the warnings say it's a skin and eye irritant. So we're going to mix it up. I noticed a woodworking biscuit is almost perfect for the radius on the inside, so we'll use that to spread it on a few other pieces of wood scrap to use as trowels and such, and let's mix it up and get going. Okay, it's done. The Mark 1 Mod 3 furnace. Made out of a Heineken mini keg. So you at least had a good time emptying it. Been fired, set to go. Now you're probably looking at this, you're like, that's not gonna melt an ice cube, much less aluminum or brass or bronze or copper. Yeah, it will. This is the third time I built this furnace. The first version, charcoal. Just used heat gun from Harbor Freight as a forced draft. It had some downsides. There's not a lot of room inside. You had to go through, smash the charcoal up to make sure it would fit before you ever fired it. And refueling it on the go was a pain in the butt because you'd inevitably drop charcoal down into your crucible, which was just iron pipe fittings when I first started. The second version, the Mod 2, basically the same thing, a few little refinements, and we added a second mini keg line. That acted like a tiny cupola, and that actually would melt cast iron. Not enough to keep it molten so you could cast anything with it, but it would melt scrap iron like nobody's business. Third version here, gone to propane. We got this burner, we bought this off of Amazon. I'll put a link in the doobly-doo, can't remember the name. I think it was about 80 bucks. This puts out flame like nothing. When I was test firing it, which you saw, this thing was glowing cherry red hot within 2 minutes. It'll do the bronze, which is my first project with this, no problem. But you're thinking, this is tiny, what can he really do with this? Well, let me show you what the Mark IV furnace is going to look like. 2 is currently in Texas melting copper, scrap copper, and the Mark III got turned into a forge. So let's show you. That's the start of the Mark IV. It's a Hurricane Harvey scrap water heater. And for size comparison, there's a 5-gallon bucket. That's going to be plenty big enough for anything you're doing at home. Stay tuned for that.